They need to make a decision about what they're supposed to do. And if they're hearing, shoot, pass, kick, take her on, like, you have so many different voices in your head, and it removes the opportunity that they have to learn to make decisions on their own.
Hello, and welcome to the Kick It with Katie podcast.
Hey team, it's Katie here, and today I have Tosh Adams, and she is going to be telling us about her journey through playing youth soccer and other youth sports and where it has taken her in her life. So Tosh, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know where you're from and how you got into playing sports.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Katie. This is really exciting to have the opportunity to go down memory lane and talk about the soccer journey and my youth experience, because I am passionate today about being a youth sports coach and providing youth athletes with a truly fun first foundation for the sports that they play, and giving coaches the tools that they need to help their athletes be successful in that process. And I think with the business of sport and the plethora of opportunities that are available to young people and families and parents, that it can get lost in the shuffle of fun first recreation, truly recreational opportunity. And that was the foundation that I had and so many of my peers had. And what that did was allow us to develop a joy and a love first, and to take that joy and turn it into a passion. And that is, the foundation for my success as an athlete. I grew up, I was the youngest of 3 kids, 2 older brothers, and I very much wanted to do absolutely everything they did. They were 5 and 6.5 years older than I was. And I loved all things sports and spent most of my time playing outside with them and the neighbors, street hockey, football in the yard. And when I was about 5 or 6, I went with one of my friends to her brother's soccer game. And I came home and said to my parents, please sign me up. I want to play soccer. And that was what they did. And I had my opportunity. And I loved it from the very first moment I played. And I was started out like a co-ed rec league. And then I played rec all the way through, I think 8th grade, and then went on to play club and regional and ODP and all of those things. But I loved my rec experience, and the coaches, I think I grew up in a unique situation, because the town that I lived in, which is Needham, Massachusetts, had established a soccer club in the late 60s. So by the time I was playing in the 80s, they had a really strong foundation. So it was run like a youth program, but it was pretty sophisticated. And, we had set practices and games, and played in a league called the Bays League. And it was just a great opportunity to get together with friends, to make friends, and to develop a love for sports, of all sports, and playing sports. And I have literally no negative memories except for breaking an arm. And I didn't even break the arm playing soccer.
Oh, no. Yeah.
It just I couldn't play. But like literally no negative memories from my youth sports experience. And it was very much a community event. We would meet for away games in the parking lot, because, I'm dating myself here, but this was like pre-GPS and obviously cell phones. And one person would have the map, their mom, and, everyone would caravan, which is like literally follow in a line to get to the field. And, you wanted to go in the car with your friends and play the music and sing the songs. And it was just an awesome experience. And I became obsessed with soccer, and I even started coaching when I was about 12 or 13. One of my coaches had, a daughter on my team, but also a younger daughter. And he asked some of us if we wanted to help out with his younger kids' teams. And I got the bug for coaching at a really young age and had some awesome mentors. And there were a lot of opportunities even then to give back to the soccer club when we were in high school, and work clinics and camps. And I had a job at a regular summer camp, but I was the soccer coach there all through high school and did camps all through college. And, after college went on to coach club teams and a USL W League team. I played in the W League for a season, and then the next season I had a bad concussion, so I helped coach a team, and I helped coach Pepperdine Club men's soccer. Just had a bunch of coaching opportunities even as a young person, and it really helped me as a player, to be able to coach a sport and to articulate what's happening. I think really helps players develop their craft. But I'm super passionate about youth sports in particular, and I shared this story recently on my Instagram where I talk about the golden age of youth sports. And that's not to say that everything was perfect and everyone's experience was like mine, but the element of no pressure. There was no pressure from coaches. There was no pressure from parents. And as a result, I didn't put a ton of pressure on myself. And I went on to have a very successful high school career and a very successful college career. I was eventually named to my university's Hall of Fame at Columbia University. And I say this as a way of setting the stage for this story, that when I was in 4th grade, I was on the 3rd team for my age group. And so mid-'80s, we were still playing 11v11 at that age. There was no modified field sizes and reduced numbers. So if I'm on the 3rd team, I'm probably anywhere from 45 to 60 kids in my age group. But I never knew it. No one ever said oh, you're on the 3rd team. You didn't make the 1st team or the 2nd team. And there was no angst or pressure around that. And I never had a feeling of being less than. I just was able to go and play. And obviously I got to a point where, I was at the top of that age group. And I really hope that young kids today can have those opportunities and not leave a sport because they don't think they're successful, or there's so much pressure from parents and coaches, and you've got to be on this club team and make this ODP team. And I feel for kids and parents. I think it's really hard as a parent to navigate what is the right path for your kid. And that's why I'm so passionate about promoting a fun first foundation. And that's not to say fun is the end all and be all and the only thing, but if you deliver with fun, you build relationships with your athletes, you increase the rapport you have with them and the trust factor, and then their performance becomes better, and you're able to include all of the kids, from your least developed athlete, which I was on the lower end of that spectrum in 4th grade, right, to your most developed athlete, and you make every one of those kids feel successful. And I played a ton of sports growing up. I know you asked me to touch on all the sports, everything that I could, with the exception of tackle football and ice hockey, and those were the 2 I would have loved to have played. And I, softball, soccer, basketball, swimming, tennis, track, ice skating. And when I was in high school, I was a 3-sport athlete, and I picked up a lacrosse stick for the first time freshman year in high school, and played lacrosse all 4 years, and played for a hot minute in college as well, because my university was building a lacrosse program at the time. But at that time, it wasn't very well established, and I was missing our off-season lifting and spring season practices, and I felt really torn and realized that at that time I wanted to put my energy towards soccer. But I've definitely come back to the lacrosse world as a parent, and all 3 of my kids love the sport, and I have been coaching lacrosse for over a decade, and running leagues and leading a lot of coaches training in lacrosse as well as other sports as well. So that's my journey. I think my coaching has evolved so much more as a parent than it ever did when I was younger. I mean, I was a high school coach when I was 22 years old, and I was so close to my own athlete's age that I almost felt like I was one of them versus I was a leader and a coach for them. And I think being a parent has made me a much better coach, and I really see through a kid's eyes, and I have the opportunity to get involved in your community and impact young people outside of your own home is just like the most rewarding thing that you can do. And even if you grow up in a community where the schools are good and the opportunities are prolific, you do still get kids that come through your program that they're struggling, and they're being raised by single parents or by grandparents, or they've got houses with addiction, or they've got mental health challenges. And I think it really truly puts everything in perspective, and you just have the opportunity to have an impact and to build a relationship with a young person, and be the person. I think it's make you one relationship away from a successful life. I think that's the quote, John O'Sullivan, the Changing the Game Project. Are you familiar with him at all?
I'm not. No. Sorry.
No. So he's amazing and definitely a resource that I would recommend looking into. But he basically says like every kid is one successful relationship away from changing their life. And to think that as a youth sports coach, like you can be that person for somebody and put them on a positive path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have definitely seen youth athletes that specifically my husband has coached, because he's coached a lot of teams up from when they were little till they've graduated and gone on to college, and now they're getting married and having kids, and being able to see those players that he coached, the way that he impacted their lives. And it's very interesting to think about what their lives could have been like. He dealt with several families that were immigrants or refugees, parents that, were going through divorces, and like you said, different backgrounds and situations. And the team camaraderie that they had with each other was amazing, because they were all able to grow up together and build a long-lasting friendship, and they're all there for each other. And so it's really great to be able to see the way that they've impacted each other's lives, the way that their coach, helped impact their lives and change their course and direction however he could and help them. So it's very important that coaches try to be that mentor as well. I mean, I try to do that for my players, that I want to try and be, if they have questions about certain things, I can be a go-to person for them, a reference for them, not just like their parents. But I always tell them, I said, like, even at practices, I'm like, if you have a question in school, you ask your teacher. I am your soccer teacher. Mm-hmm. So that is what I am here for. So ask me questions or whatever, because that's what I'm here for. And so it's very, very important that we as coaches definitely step up to that role and not just be there clocking in for practice, and that's kind of the end of it. Let's see how we can, a player's going through a hard time, reaching out to them if need be, depending on the situation, if you need to help out in any way. I know when families have gone through, like, players are going through injuries, or there's been maybe a death in the family, or we know that somebody's struggling, and seeing the way that teams have come around and helped each other and helped out with each other, that's great to see that camaraderie that people have, and that it's not so selfish, I guess, but they're trying to be there with each other, having that community with each other, because that's very important, that you don't just want to just be there to be there, but you want to be there to love it and grow with each other and that's a good thing to do together as a team.
Absolutely. And I always say that it's a privilege to be a youth sports coach because you have like a powerful opportunity to impact young people and to also help them foster those team relationships. I mean, being on a team has been like one of the single greatest gifts in my entire life. And I look back on all of my teammates with a fondness, and like they're not all my best friends in the sense that, you know, I don't talk to all of them all the time, or like I wouldn't, if I was younger, I didn't have every one of them sleep over and like have dinner at my house. But the bond you have with your teammates through going through a shared experience like that is like just a mutual respect for the effort that you put forth, and you know that they share in that. And like knowing that they're your sisters for life and they would do anything for you and you for them. And unfortunately, I had both a high school and a college teammate that was two of them that were the same. We went to high school together and college together. And one of them was killed shortly after college in like a real freak accident. You know, she had one of the most remarkable 9/11 survival stories that I heard. She was literally in the basement of, I think it was Tower 1, and got out, and then was skydiving about 9 months later in Belgium, and just a freak accident. A plane went up in the air and had been taking runs all morning. It nosedived, and she was the only fatality on board. But like it was tragic. It was so incredibly sad. But the way that my teammates rallied around each other when that happened, and we were all out of college at this point by like a year or two, and everybody came in and, you know, spent days together and really supported each other and her family through that process. And, you know, obviously anybody rallies around a tragedy, but I think the depth to which you have that bond as a teammate is just so remarkable, and it's an incredible asset, especially in a tragic moment like that.
Yeah, something in our community recently happened to a player in our soccer community, and she passed away, unfortunately. And so the way that not just her club, but the whole soccer community in our state has rallied around them has been amazing. And because it was such a, you know, a tragic accident for such a young player to have to go through, and their family and teammates, you know. And then one of my husband's teams, they had already graduated from high school, but they also lost a player. And they all came together for, you know, for his funeral and everything that was going on. And it was really sad to be a part of that and see them lose that friend and teammate that they had. But they still, you know, had those bonds together that helped them get through it. And, you know, we still think about him often because it was just such a hard thing to go through for him. To lose that. And so it's always great to be able to see those teammates that are able to support each other and be there for each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why don't we get into more of, so you said that you got the coaching bug, which a lot of people, I mean, I know several people who kind of get the coaching bug. I got into coaching a little bit mostly because of my husband, and I've shared my story, how I got into coaching. I've been around it for several years, but you got it at a very young age, you said. And so where has that taken you throughout your life? Because I know that you do some things with coaches right now. And so what is that you work with the coaches right now?
Sure. I found my way into the lacrosse community here in my town, basically through my kids. I think in retrospect, I was sort of overly careful to want my journey in soccer to directly influence their path and their choices. And so they all played soccer, but not one of them still plays a little bit. He's only 8. But they found their passion in other sports. And so I wanted to be where they were, you know. That was And I had a background as a lacrosse athlete as well, which a lot of people my age, it's not as common because it's such a growing sport, and especially females, I should say. Not as many people played, especially outside of, the Northeast, if you take Maryland and north from there. And, the game that we played is different. In high school, I wore a hockey helmet to play women's lacrosse. In college, I didn't even wear goggles. And, now they wear goggles. But it's changed so much. But I sort of found my people in the lacrosse coaching community and ended up, committing a lot of time and resources to that. And as a result, my children were already playing, but they sort of increased their passion as well. So, what started out as not trying to influence their journey, I think I definitely influenced their journey. But I mean, isn't that life as a parent, right? It's sort of something that we can't help. But so my kids play lacrosse, they love lacrosse, and I started out just coaching, and then I became a director and responsible for other coaches, and then I was helping lead a league, so we're putting on trainings, and really just kind of doing this as a labor of love for off and on for the last decade, and training coaches to whether it's developmentally appropriate drills and practice activities and tactics, and then moving on as they age up. And I think a lot of volunteer youth sports coaches just move with their kids, right? They start coaching them when they're 6 or 7, and then they move up, and then by the time they get to 8th grade, they're handing them over to a high school coach. But each time they're taking on a new age group, there's a learning curve that they've never been at that level before. And coaching a middle school athlete is different than coaching a 6 and 7-year-old. And I think that is where I was able to add a lot of value, because I've had extensive coaching experience both in soccer and now lacrosse. So I do coaches trainings. It's not just soccer and lacrosse. I've done them for field hockey coaches, and I've got one for basketball program, and I've not coached basketball or field hockey. I never even played field hockey, but the messaging is the same, and it's really about connecting with young people and providing a fun environment for them to be successful. So I do a lot of training and speaking events, and I am excited to say that I have a course that will be launching in March. So I would love if people are interested in connecting with their youth athletes and creating environments that will help all of them to be successful, to follow me on Instagram, and I will point you in the right direction and definitely be announcing that. And I show up on there at least weekly, if not more, with what I call a Tuesday training tip, connecting with, it's either for athletes, for coaches, or for parents, all of those things being very interconnected in my mind and in my world. And I will have some free resources for coaches coming up as well. But I think there's a lot of decent content in there as well if you just bump back a few times. So.
Yeah, that's awesome that you provide that. I know I've mentioned previously, but our club started like a mentorship program for any interested parents that want to be interested in coaching. They get to kind of job shadow coaches and see what training's all about and how to run trainings and different things. But the other side of it, like I know that there's like the execution of like running a practice or coaching in a game. But there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that coaches have to go through. I mean, deal with, as far as dealing with parents and things like that. And that's one thing that I've been thinking recently. I'm like, I think there needs to be like a coaching course on that, like how to deal with the stuff off the pitch, because that stuff is really hard to navigate as well. And I've just been thinking about it the last few months, because I'm like, it's really interesting, like just to see how people try to navigate through things when they don't know. Like I ask my husband a lot, I'm like, what should I do in this situation, and he'll give me his advice of what he's done in the past for certain things. And so I try and pass that knowledge on to people that are in the mentorship program or coaching or new to coaching in our club. And so it's always good to have any extra resources as far as what coaches can do or still learn as part of the whole job. Because I know, like, when we go through coaching courses, and I don't know what it's like for other sports, but like when we get licensed for soccer, you go through the coaching courses and they have you do the in-person trainings and things like that, and learning specific, the 7v7, the 9v9, and then 11v11, and then up and up, getting your different licensing. But, they don't really talk about the administrative side or the actual, because there are coaches who are like, I don't talk to parents ever. Like, there are those, and then there's, I'll talk to your player because that's who I'm coaching type of a thing. So it's really interesting to see like how people try and navigate that stuff and whatever help we can give other coaches, because I know that's stuff that is very difficult to navigate through.
Totally. I mean, you completely hit the nail on the head. I've been researching a lot and talking to a lot of programs lately, just to get a sense of where they're at and what their needs are. And, I'm definitely an admin in my community as well, and I see all sides of this. And soccer's a little bit different because the licensing model. And so there is a very specific resource that is fairly universal that coaches have for technical training and tactical training. But the how to run a youth sports program, how to set expectations with your parents, how to secure fields and develop schedules and all of that, that is what takes up the bulk of coaches' time and responsibility. And it's hard for those that are in a position to support other coaches to even take the time to give them training or to think about their own teams and their own practices, because the job is so admin heavy. There's so many things that have to happen in order to just get the program out there. And parents is far and away like the biggest hurdle that any coach of any sport has and complains about. And so I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I do not have a psychology background, but I have begun to attribute sort of negative parental behavior to really strong evolutionary forces. And I think if we can start to understand why parents act the way that they do, it might make it easier to sort of mitigate the negative behaviors and help educate in the process. And I think it comes down to a couple of things, and I might be completely oversimplifying this, but like, for example, we are all like evolutionary driven to survive and for our lineage to survive, right? So we want to protect our offspring, and that can show when we're watching them play a game, and we want them to be successful. So we're coaching from the sidelines and yelling instructions to them. And then we want to secure all their resources, right? Like if we were going to survive thousands of years ago, we needed resources. We needed food, we needed shelter, we needed fire. And those resources today are opportunities, whether it's playing time or making the select team or the club team or the all-star team. And so parents sort of get very territorial about these things. And then the third factor is that we're all really tribal. And when you're with a group of people that are also sort of clutching at these resources and trying to protect their kids, that behavior becomes contagious. And we all start, mirroring like our peers. And sometimes like it's not a good thing. I'm probably oversimplifying it, but that's sort of my latest line of thinking around that. And I had a real sort of aha moment. I was doing a coach's training, and I had a woman who was a coach, and it was at this point we had opened it up to Q&A, and we're talking about everything across the board. I was working with all levels, from really young kids all the way through 8th grade at this point training. And the woman we were all talking about parents and strategies for managing parents successfully. And this woman admitted that she was an introvert and very shy, but that she got in the car with her daughter one day, and her daughter was like, "Mom, could you please stop yelling on the sidelines? You're so embarrassing. Like, please stop." And she said, like, "I had no idea that I was doing it, and like I didn't even know that I was loud." So it's like an unconscious behavior in some cases. Because to me, like, I had sort of my judgmental hat on prior to that, and I was like rolling my eyes at people who are like overly coaching on the sideline, and like, why can they just like chill out and not do that? But I honestly think, like, if we give parents perspective and statistics and like help them understand the bigger picture, I'm optimistic by nature. So I think maybe like we can help with some of this and help mitigate the process.
Yeah.
But for a coach, I think the biggest thing that they can do, if this is not done by their admins or their sort of league board, is to set expectations with parents early and often, and keep it's an ongoing process, but really make it clear to your parents that coaching from the sidelines is inappropriate, and these are the boundaries that you have set, and this is how you're handling things, and just whatever your rules of engagement are, but be really clear, because they don't know, and parents are going to push that unless we hold that line with them.
Yeah, and I remember being a youth athlete myself and telling my mom to shut up. I yelled. I was on the field and my mom was yelling, she was probably just saying, run faster.
Or boot
I
it,
played defense.
Boot it, right?
Yeah, and yeah, that's the worst. And anyway, so I remember telling her, Mom, shut up. And everybody on the sideline, like, just was in shock. And my mom was just like, what the, and I don't know what happened after that. I don't know if she kept yelling at me, but usually, like, for me as an athlete and even now into coaching, I get so focused. And I've told people, I said, I get so focused that what the parents are doing, most of the time, I don't even pay attention to what they're doing. So if parents are yelling from the sidelines, sometimes I don't even notice because I'm so into, what's going on in the game, which is what I should be doing. I shouldn't be having to babysit the parents. I'm here for their kids. I'm not here for them. They're adults. They should be able to mind themselves. And there have been one or two times in the last 6 months that I've had to tell parents to be quiet and to stop for various reasons, because sometimes as a player, if your parent is yelling at you and you're on the field, it gets very frustrating. And it's hard for me as a player to focus when my coach is telling me to do one thing, you're telling me to do another thing, and it's distracting and it gets frustrating. And so it's worse for the player the more you yell and scream. Like,
oh, for sure.
That's how I feel it is. I mean, I've seen the faces of players that literally just like, sometimes, maybe I have to take a player off the field because their parent is literally distracting them from the game, so if you want to keep doing that, your kid's not going to be able to play because you keep yelling at them.
Yeah.
So please stop.
I know. It's
not helping.
No, the kid is trying very hard to work on that skill, right? If they're receiving a ball, they need to settle it, they need to turn, they need to pick their head up, they need to see where their options are. So all of that is happening in a split second, right? And at the same time, they need to make a decision about what they're supposed to do. And if they're hearing shoot, pass, kick, take her on, like, you have so many different voices in your head, and it removes the opportunity that they have to learn to make decisions on their own and learn, fail, learn, succeed. Like, it is all part of the process, and making decisions is like a critical part of youth development, regardless of whether you're playing a sport or not. Like, that's why there is the expression, like a kid in a candy store, like, because they're overwhelmed with choice that they can't focus and make a decision. But we have to just let kids learn how to make decisions. And, some will be good, some will be bad, but the process is what they're there for. So,
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of players are afraid to make mistakes, which I have told all of my players over and over again. This is learning. You're not a professional. Even professionals mess up. So if you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. You just have to learn from it and grow from it, which is what you should do. And I don't want you to be afraid to make a mistake. And I feel like sometimes when parents are yelling, I mean, I'm a parent of a player and I don't want my players to make a mistake. My son's a goalkeeper. Sometimes I feel horrible. Like if a goal gets scored on him and maybe it was his mistake, I don't know. And so I feel that. I feel that as a parent. We don't want our kids to make mistakes, but they're kids. They're going to make mistakes. It's what happens.
Totally.
They're not professionals.
Totally.
The kids that I coach are like 10 and 11 and their parents are setting their bars like they're, 18, 19-year-old players. And it's like, no, let's bring the bar down a lot lower. 'Cause I know that they can be great players, but they're still little kids. But it's difficult for parents, when they see such young athletes being signed to professional contracts because they go, well, I want that for my kid. It's like, well,
that is
the majority of kids are not going to get that opportunity.
Right. That is the exception.
Yeah.
I think that that's a big part of it. Like it's uncomfortable for a parent to watch their kid struggle. It's uncomfortable. They think people are judging them by their own kids' successes and failures. And so they want to compensate for that. And it's just hard. And I do think that there is an element that parents have with they want that. They want that single opportunity, like the 13-year-old that you had talked about on your podcast who signed for Sacramento. I mean, that is so rare. Like I talk about the fact that only 5% on average of a high school athlete is going to play in college. 5%. So like high school is like, that's the pinnacle for the vast majority of kids, and like make it a great experience for them. And, I think parents have this mindset like, well, if I just had this opportunity or this private coaching or this, then I would have made it to D1 and I would have had these opportunities. So therefore I want to give this to my kid because I want to give them what I didn't have. And I think it's misguided in some ways. Sure, it might be successful for some people to follow that model, but if you're not naturally imbued with a drive yourself and it's manufactured by your parents creating external opportunities for you, you're not going to make it very far because you have to have that within you, by the time your parents are gone and they're not directly influencing your choices, like you're going to struggle.
Yeah, I mean, a few of the players that I've interviewed that have gone to professional ranks, one of the things that they had to make a lot of sacrifices, and their parents, made sure that that's what they wanted to do. And it wasn't driven necessarily by the player's parents, but it was something that the player wanted to do with their life, So it's definitely something that you want to make sure your player is in, if that's what they want to try and do, that's great. But you have to understand the reality is that it's a very slim chance that it might happen. And so you have to keep grounded, but it's not something, I mean, the opportunities now are there's way more opportunity now than when we were younger, for sure. I mean, going pro was so new when I was growing up. It was like, wait, women can play professional soccer? Like, I didn't even know that it was like a thing.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just, you have to keep it in perspective as well. Because even though there are still more opportunities now, it's still a very small percentage will actually get that opportunity. And so I've seen parents who, like you said, are manufacturing those opportunities for their kids. And I look at some of the kids' faces that have gone through those ranks where their parents have manufactured it, and they look miserable. It's like I mean, at least the way that I've seen it, it doesn't look like they want it, but they don't want to disappoint their parents. And so they keep doing it. And it may turn into something, it may not. I mean, one of the players that I think he's in his early 20s now, his parents yanked him from team to team to team to team. They moved states. They went from team to team. I mean, he never stayed on a team that I know of for more than a year. And it all didn't go very far for him. He may have played college. I didn't really keep in touch, but I mean, he just got yanked around all over the place. And it was because his dad was driving him to do these amazing things. And maybe if he had stayed with a coach that would be able to develop him as a player, but he didn't even get to stay long enough anywhere that he, didn't, I mean, he was definitely an athlete, but, I mean, I don't know how far he actually went. And so it was just really sad to see because he was such a talented player, and seeing him go from place to place to place was just really disheartening. And, I hope that he ended up getting something out of it, whether he ended up playing college. I don't know what he ended up doing, but it's always, hard to see that happen for people that are trying to get their kids to do these things, and whether they love it or not, I don't know,
Totally.
I mean, like I've said before, my mom, was like, you're going to try out for this team one day. And I was just like, okay, whatever. Like, my mom dictated where I went as a kid, because there wasn't internet, and there wasn't, there were only so few options in the area, as far as like where you would play. And so I was like, I just want to play. And so I did, but it's just very, very disheartening to see some of that happening. And it's, hopefully, I mean, I would love to say that it's going to get better, but I'm sure it's just going to get worse.
I know. I don't know.
That's the reality. Hard truth.
I'm optimistic, and so I'm always hopeful that things will get better. And as a parent, like, we really need to look at the sacrifices that you're making, that your kids are making, that your family is making for these opportunities. And what are you getting in return? Like, there is a tremendous value in sports, and I fully subscribe to that belief, and don't get me wrong.
Yes.
But, like, it has to be delivered wisely, and at what sacrifice. Like, you're obviously, if you're driving further and you're sacrificing family dinners, and, I was talking with a parent yesterday that's leaving on Thanksgiving morning for their fourth graders hockey team to go away, and he's like, I don't know what we're doing, like, really, we're not even going to be there for Thanksgiving dinner. And some sports like have a culture, like there is a soccer culture for Thanksgiving weekend tournaments, and but like, I don't know, like, these sports are encroaching so much on family life and family values, and they're making families feel that if they don't do XYZ, their kid can't be on this team and can't have this opportunity. And but in the same time, they're not even promising that your kid's going to make their high school varsity team. They're taking your money, they're asking for your time, and you're sure getting stuff out of it. But I think parents need to be more discerning in the sacrifices that they're making, and where they're taking their kids, and are their programs truly development focused? Because unfortunately, they're not all development focused. They focus on their record, because their record is what attracts new families, and new families is what keeps them in business. So that's the sad part. I guess that's where I'm not as optimistic. Yeah,
it's very, as far as like, I'm 100% a part of the Thanksgiving weekend soccer culture. I have been since I was a kid, and have continued. Like, when we're home for Thanksgiving, like, we're like, what are we doing here? Like, what's happening? Like, how does Thanksgiving at home operate? And then we have kids, and we try to navigate between both of our families, because they're like, oh, you're home, so they both want us to be there. And so that's a difficult thing. But I mean, I personally like it. It's our family tradition to be out of town, and that's kind of our family time. If our kids aren't playing, we kind of make it a family vacation, and that's kind of our thing that we do with it. And so that's something that we do as a family, and we try to make it a family thing, because it's my husband's full-time job is coaching. That's his job. And so we always make sure that people understand, like, this isn't just a vacation necessarily, it's a work trip also. And
but you're doing it together, and everyone's going. You're not taking, it's not just your husband or one kid. And you're all in on it.
Which when I grew up, I remember there was one year, I think it was right before my brother went on a service mission to Brazil for 2 years, and it was his last Thanksgiving home. And so we did a Thanksgiving dinner at home, and then my dad and one of my brothers flew out to, I don't know where they went. I don't know if it was, they went to California, and then me and my mom flew out to Vegas, and then my other brothers were just at home. So it was just like we made a mini Thanksgiving, and then we flew off to wherever we needed to go for our respective tournaments that we were playing in that weekend. And, so sometimes that's really hard, when your families are in multiple sports and there's
multiple kids
activities happening the same weekend, and
every
they
weekend.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, it's always very difficult, but families make it work. And I have a friend who has, like us, multiple kids in multiple sports, multiple activities, and play on multiple different soccer teams or sports teams. And so, they make sure that at the beginning of the week, they know what their week's going to be like and when they're going to be home and who's going to be where and that type of a thing. So, it's whatever works for whatever family and how you want it to be. But I think the difficulty is when, maybe one kid seems to be getting more priority over another, or sometimes that happens. And so you have to make sure you navigate that really well, and however that works for your family.
Yeah,
and just make sure
hard.
that
It's a balance, and each kid getting time with different parents, and it's hard to juggle all of it. And I think to your earlier point, though, just making sure that the kids want to be doing it, that they're having fun in the process. We've always told our kids, if you don't want to be playing soccer, you don't have to be playing soccer. And for the most part, they do want to be playing soccer. So that's, what they've said they've wanted to do. And so we're here to support you if that's what you want to do. If you end up not wanting to play, that's fine as well. We haven't, a lot of people think that we put pressure on our kids to play soccer. It's just we're always around soccer. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the thing that they've wanted to do. If they want to explore something else, we can try and get them to explore something else. Like they did swimming lessons for a while, and one of our kids does choir, and another one he plays viola. Our daughters are in gymnastics. So we try and make sure that they have different opportunities, that they don't just have to focus on the one thing if they don't want to. Sure.
So we try and give them that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to touch on as far as like what you do for the coaches, or do you have any advice for players or coaches out there?
I think it's always got to be fun, whether you're a player or a coach, because in order for you to make it at the highest levels and to be successful and to make those sacrifices that we're talking about, I can't remember a 4th of July between high school and college where I was able to hang out with my friends and go see fireworks. I was at a soccer tournament, or I was in Canada playing, or whatever, mm-hmm. right? Your Memorial Day weekends, your Labor Day weekends, whatever it is, you're making sacrifices and you're doing things that, not all your friends have to do. And if it's not fun, it's going to be hard to continue to be successful. And when you're trying to introduce kids to a sport and you want to have them continue to come back and to keep signing up, like, you've got to start with fun first. And I think that that's the rule for all ages. Even if you survey high school athletes and you ask them why they play sports, the number one reason they say is fun. So I think for coaches, we need to keep that in mind and realize, like, that's what kids want. And you can certainly have very high level successful programs that have a fun first mentality. And I feel very, very grateful that I had that. Sure, there's times where I was dragging myself out of bed to get to a 6 a.m. lift, or I, was tired, or lamented the fact that all my mm-hmm. friends were partying on the 4th of July and I was on a bus to Canada. But I wouldn't trade any of it. Like, it was so worth it for me, and I loved it. It was fun. fun throughout. So.
Yeah, it's definitely want to make sure that you have that element of kids wanting to keep coming back. I had just an email, I don't even remember who it was from, but it was basically like, trying to retain your players. And I didn't even look at the article or anything, but it was kind of like one of those things where I want to make sure that the team is having fun and that they're developing and that they want to be there. It's not something that they want to miss, they don't want, they want to keep coming back. And that element of fun is definitely something that you want to keep in there and make sure that you're getting your players that time where they're still having fun. I usually try and make sure, since I coach younger ages as well, that we do some fun exercise either at the beginning or the end of the practice, whatever it may be, but something that they all love to do. And so it's kind of like a reward, I guess, in a way, as long as the session has gone well and things like that. So it's, and it's something that they look forward to do at the end of practice. And so it's still a part of soccer, or, teaching them skills and things like that. So they're still having that fun and still learning. And so they enjoy it and they love to do it. And so that's always important to make sure that your players want to come back.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, retention is the goal for sure.
Do you have anything else that you want to add to the message to anybody?
I am here to support coaches and athletes and parents in their journey. And you can reach out to me on my Instagram is the best way to get a hold of me. It's at Coach Tosh Ford with an E Adams. My maiden name is Ford with an E. So Coach Tosh Ford Adams, and you can send me a DM with your questions. I'm here to support you. I'm happy to train your coaches. I do trainings over Zoom, live, in person, and keep an eye out for the course I have coming and some free resources. And I love to connect with coaches and to hear their stories. And so thanks for the forum, Katie. It's been awesome.
Yeah, and we'll definitely make sure that I put your link to your Instagram in the show notes. So if you guys are interested in connecting with Tosh, you can find that link in the show notes. But I've definitely enjoyed having you on today, and I'm sure we'll have you on again in the future. That would be great to have you back on, especially after you've released your course at some point, to see how that's going. But that's all I have for you today. So if you don't have anything else to add.
No, I'm good. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for kicking it with me today. Thanks for kicking it with me, and have a great day. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at kickitwithkatie_podcast _ between all the words. You can reach out to me with questions at kickitwithkatiepod@gmail.com. I also have a feature with SpeakPipe where you can leave me your own voicemail message if you want to be featured on the podcast. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.